Hello. Today, I would like to talk about the new Spike Lee film, Highest to Lowest. Um, and I'm just coming back from seeing the movie now. I don't have any notes or anything. It's all in my head. So, I'm probably going to forget things and regret it later. And this is probably going to be all windy and rambly and stuff. But that's fine because I feel like I need to talk about this movie. Now, Spike Lee, okay, is one of my favorite filmmakers, but he's quite inconsistent. You know, like when a Spike Lee movie is bad, it is very bad. Okay, but when Spike Lee nails it, like which he usually does, I would say at least like three quarters of his filmography is like great, peerless. When he nails it, he's just exceptional. And I think he totally nailed it here. And not only that, I think he showed a side of his artistry and just the amount of control he has and the chops he has as a filmmaker that I don't know that I've seen before from him. Not that he hasn't done like incredible filmmaking in the past, but like I was sitting there in this film. First of all, okay, rambly bullshit. Okay, there are going to be spoilers. I have to talk about spoilers because otherwise I'm not going to be able to talk about the things about the film that really surprised me and made me happy. So if you care about that kind of thing and you don't want to hear spoilers, go watch the movie first. Even if you don't see it in theaters, it's going to be on Apple Plus soon. Okay. So I'm going to give you a second to leave. Okay. So when this movie started, I thought it was terrible. Okay, like the dialogue was really like stagey. The performances were like insincere. The music was really overbearing. It had kind of the feel of like a daytime soap opera. And I was just sitting there like it wasn't like I disliked the movie. It was like I was like, this is a piece of shit. Like I can't believe I have to sit here for like 2 hours and watch this clearly terrible movie. And then over the course of the film, it twists into this thing that is just completely different tonally, stylistically. And here's the thing. I was sitting there having this experience where I start out strongly disliking the film and end loving the film. And it felt like this very personal journey where I was just like, you know, other people probably aren't going to feel exactly the way I feel. This journey is going to be unique to me, and maybe this is going to be one of those films where I'm going to say, like, oh, I love it. I know it has problems, but like for example, there's a Spike Lee movie, Red Hook Summer, which is a very flawed movie, but I happen to like really love that movie. And even though there's awkward filmmaking in parts, he made it for a very low budget. I will. I'll always really love that film. But going to this with my friend and seeing that we had the exact same experience. Like we both started out really disliking the movie, thinking it was super awkward and annoying, and then we both ended up loving the film in the end. We went on like the exact same journey through the film. And to me, that shows that Spike Lee, he did this totally intentionally. He has like such control as a filmmaker that he can start out with this, shitty melodramatic soap opera and transform it into this really compelling, exciting film. So the question is, like, why would he do that? If he intended to do that, and I totally think he did. Denzel Washington's character in this movie, he's like a rich record label executive, and he used to, really care about the music and care about the art. but these days he just kind of cares about money and reputation and ego, right? So when the movie starts, and here's where I'm getting into spoilers. So Denzel's son gets kidnapped, right? And it's really melodramatic and over the top and lame, and it once again feels like a soap opera. And then that problem is resolved real fast. It turns out his kid is fine. Who actually got kidnapped was the kid of his friend, his driver, this person who, is much less financially stable, who has a harder life, who's had a harder journey, who, like recently got out of prison. Um, his son got kidnapped because they confused the two boys. They thought they were kidnapping Denzel's son, but they were actually kidnapping the son of the character played by Jeffrey Wright, right? And so, like, the police are like all over Denzel and just being like, you know, we'll do, whatever it takes to help you and get your boy back, and make sure that even if you pay them, you're going to get your money back. You have nothing to worry about. And meanwhile, Jeffrey Wright is just standing in the background, being like, I don't know where my son is either, you know. And there's never like a scene where the police like officially tell him that like okay, we're going to be there for you now, Jeffrey, right? And like comfort him and tell him it's going to be all right. In fact, before they find out that it's his son who was kidnapped, they think that he was the guy who did it, that he's behind all of this, because he in the past he'd been in prison, you know? And so now the kidnappers are still asking for the same amount of money, which is a crazy amount of money. It's like $17.5 million, I think, for the return of Jeffrey Wright's son, right? And Denzel was totally willing to pay this money when it was his son. But now that it's Jeffrey Wright's son, he's conflicted about it. And the whole time you're just like, fuck this guy. Because yes, it is a lot of money. Yes, he's gonna be like at risk, with like the shareholders and the people he borrowed money from, and that is what it is. But it's hard to care about his like rich person problems when they're gonna kill this kid. They're gonna kill the son of his loyal friend, this guy who's done a lot for him and who's always there for him. And Denzel's just like, oh, I don't know, I don't know, what should I do, and he talks with his friend at the label, and his friend tells him like, oh, you gotta pay the ransom. And it's just like, does he have to pay the ransom because it's like the morally right thing to do, because this is the son of his friend and he needs to be there for his friend? And it's like, no, he needs to pay the ransom because otherwise he's going to get canceled and they're going to demonize him on social media and he'll never work in the industry again. And even his son tries to talk him into it too, into paying the ransom. And his excuse is like, oh, if I get, blacklisted over this, like, how am I going to get, into a good college, and like, they're making fun of me on Twitter, and it's just like all these, like, who cares? Who cares about any of this? There's a kid who's about to die, and it's largely your fault that this is happening because, number one, they thought that the kid they were kidnapping was Denzel's son, and number two, the only reason this is happening is because, and this is where we're getting into some serious spoilers, because this rapper who's like a genuinely talented guy, you know, grew up like idolizing Denzel and knowing that someday they would work together and Denzel would like pull him out of poverty and like, give him a career. And Denzel just never listens to his music. He never even considers him, and so he has to do something more desperate just to get by, to get seen. you know? And Denzel's wife is kind of with him, being like, "Oh, it's an awful lot of money. Oh, I don't know what we should do. You wanted to buy the record label and stuff." And it's just like, "Oh my God, save the kid." Oh yeah, and also there's this crazy scene, and I can't believe I forgot to talk about this because it's one of my favorite moments for Denzel's character. The police go to Denzel and they're like, "Look, you're not going to lose this money. Okay, we're going to put a tracker in the bag. We're going to arrest these guys. We're going to get your money back. Okay, all you have to do to buy us some more time is tell the kidnapper that you're going to pay them later, because otherwise they might kill the kid right now, right?" And Denzel agonizes over this. He doesn't just say, "Yeah, I'll lie to the kidnapper if it'll buy this kid a few more hours." Like he's so wrapped up in his own ego and self-image that he can't even lie to these people that he's going to acquiesce to them and give them what they want, because even if he's lying, that in the moment would be perceived as a show of weakness. So eventually, Denzel agrees to save the kid, right? And the police are not really looking for the kid all that hard. They're just like, "We're going to follow Denzel, we're going to follow the money, maybe they'll lead us to where the kid is." But it seems like the focus is really on the money, like we're going to protect the money, you know? And so Denzel gives them the money. He does it accidentally. He drops it, and they grab it from him, right? And so now, they get the kid back, but it's not enough for Denzel. Denzel doesn't really care that the kid is back. There's never a scene where he goes to the kid's hospital room and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. I was so worried about you." Denzel's like, "They still have my fucking money. I need my money back." And his friend, whose kid was just returned to him, after potentially days of Denzel like stringing him along, and being like, "I don't know if I'll pay the money," and his friend is such a good friend that he's just like, "No, I'm gonna go with you, and I'm gonna help you get your money back, even though it's gonna put me in danger, even though we should just leave this to the police. We're gonna go get your money back." Right? And then you know there's a confrontation. I won't get into super spoilers for like the very end of the movie, in case you have regrets watching this far. But like Jeffrey Wright, like he gets like hit in the eye during this conflict with like a piece of glass, and Denzel goes over to help him, and he's just like, "No, no, forget about it. Go after the money." And so Denzel, he runs after the money. He tracks down this kid. He beats him up. He gets arrested. They take his money from his crappy apartment where he lives in the crappy part of town, and he's left with nothing. He tries to leverage it into getting a deal to get his music out there, and and Denzel won't do it. So this guy is just left with nothing, and it's like, yes, he did this terrible thing, but there was this system in place that brought him to that point. He wants to be an artist, and he wants to work with this guy who he respects so much, and he just can't get anywhere. He can't get out of poverty. He can't get this guy to listen to his music. So you end up feeling for both of them in different ways, I think. And then when Jeffrey Wright's in the hospital, his eyes all covered up, and Denzel's in there, and they're having this nice little moment with this like overbearing, sappy music, and like Denzel is like cracking like Cyclops jokes, and I just so badly wanted Jeffrey Wright's character to be like, "You know what, man, fuck you." You know, it's like, you don't give a shit about my son. You just give a shit about your money. You put me in danger. I lost my fucking eye. And I didn't even get. My son was the one kidnapped. If anyone should have gotten revenge on this guy, it should have been me. But you even took that away from me. You know, that's what I wanted him to say. But he doesn't. He just kind of laughs along and grins and puts up with it because he's a nice guy and because he's loyal to Denzel. You know, and Denzel's character is very realistic in that, you know, these very rich people in like positions of power, you know, a lot of times they are very shitty people who do, you know, awful things like blatantly, but they're likable and they're charismatic and they have a lot of power and a lot of respect. So they're allowed to get away, you know, with all kinds of stuff, with not being good people. You know, and that's kind of the case in this. You see Denzel being really shitty at a lot of points in this movie, but he stays likable. You still root for him, you know, because he's able to overcome his shittiness with his likability. You know, and like, so the film, when it starts, you know, it's like everything I didn't like about the film at the beginning: the stagey acting, the overbearing music, the the really kind of obvious and like ponderous script, you know, all of that just slowly goes away. And then you when the film builds to this climax, this like super tense climax, you know, it's like the music has transformed. It's gone from this big, you know, loud melodramatic bombast to like this much, you know, like leaner, kind of more exciting music. And there are even great scenes in the film, really tense scenes in the film, where there's no music at all, where there's just complete silence, you know. And all of this shows, like that 180 the film does, shows how intentional he was with this, that he wants to start you out in this unrealistic soap opera with these rich people with their rich person problems, and he ends the film there too. And then in the middle, he he brings you into reality, you know, whether you want to go there or not. And just the journey of the film is so powerful. And like Spike Lee, he gets a reputation for being like kind of didactic, you know, and preachy. And I've never really felt that way, you know. Like that one Treehouse of Horror on The Simpsons, where they're firing all the most annoying people in the world into the sun, and like, you know, like Rosie O'Donnell is on there, and you know, all these annoying celebrities, and like as Spike Lee's on there too, because he's, you know, outspoken, you know, and because he doesn't compromise as an artist. But this film is not didactic at all. It just presents it. It just shows you this guy and all of his shittiness and all of his good traits too, and it leaves you to kind of put the pieces together and feel how you're going to feel, you know, which is the way it goes in real life with celebrities. You know, when a celebrity does something shitty, we see a bad side of them, we have that choice to be like, okay, so am I going to dislike you now, or am I still going to like you and root for you, you know, regardless, you know, because I'm invested in you as an artist or as a person, you know. So this film, it just captures that conflict so well, and it doesn't tell you which way to feel, which I really appreciated. And you know, Denzel is absolutely incredible in this movie, and Jeffrey Wright is great too. And more than anything, I'm just blown away that all of them were willing to go on this creative risk with Spike Lee, you know, that because all of them are complicit in it, you know, like Denzel had to be stagey at the beginning and deliver his lines in this kind of stilted way so that that transformation would have more power. All of the actors had to do that. The composer had to do that. There are two composers on this movie, and I wonder if like one composer was supposed to write the shitty melodramatic music and one was supposed to write the good music. I don't know. But just that everybody was on board with this, like it's almost like a practical joke or like a magic trick, where it's this awful movie that transforms into this fantastic movie, and it's hard to even pinpoint where it happens, but just all of a sudden you're in the middle of it and you're like, this is fantastic, you know and then when he brings it back at the end, it's just this display of power, of like filmmaking prowess that he has so much control over the tone and feel of this film that he can willingly make a, a fake bad film and trick you into going on this really impactful journey with his characters, and then at the end leave you with all of these conflicted thoughts in your head, just going back and forth between like, who did I like, who did I dislike, who was right, who was wrong, you know it's such a complex and cool and beautifully made movie, and I think it's one of Spike Lee's best films, and I think it's one of the best films of the year, like probably top five for me right now. So that's it. I hope that I didn't spoil the movie for you. And some people care about spoilers, some people don't. Even if you just went into this being like, I'll listen to some spoilers. I'm not that interested in this movie anyway. Like, even hearing everything I've said, I can't encapsulate the experience of watching this. It's super unique. So just go see it anyway, and go on that trip, and it's going to happen. Whether you want it to, or it's just like that's the journey he's going to take you on. Even if you think all his tricks and stuff, and you know how this is going to go, he's gonna like pull a fast one on you, and it's going to be awesome. So that's about it. It's a great movie. Hopefully you've seen it already. If you haven't seen it, go see it.